Hey guys, check out this Red River lava table that we just finished. We're gonna show you everything that we did, from taking this chainsaw cut slab and flattening it and pouring a Red River lava epoxy right down the center. You can do any color you choose. We're gonna teach you all the tips and tricks right now. You can visit our website anytime at stonecoatcountertops.com. Enjoy the video. One piece, it really becomes very strong. Hey guys, Mike here with stonecoatcountertops.com. We're gonna do a live edge river table right now. You guys asked for another one of these kind of tables. We're gonna do a variation, and we're gonna do some fun techniques and teach you some great ways to ensure that you come out with an unbelievable project. We are starting with the ugly duckling. This thing really needs some love. It's seen better days. It's got almost fur growing on it over here. It's been left out in the weather. What we've done is we've dried this slab. We took our moisture meter and we made sure that the slab moisture content was just under 13%. You don't want to be higher than 13%. That's your safe zone. We do have some tolerance for moisture, but that's a good solid number to go by. So what we're going to do is we're going to plane this down. We're going to use our router jig. This is really uneven. You can see the warp in it. It's twisted, and so we're going to find exactly how it should be mounted. We're going to mount this to our table, and then we're going to plane it down nice and flat. We are going to turn this slab into something just outstanding. I can't wait for you to see the end result. Let's get started right now. Here we go. Okay, one of the first steps that we're going to do is we're going to set up our slab jig to our table depth. Our table has got a nice thick slab here, so we got some runners that lift our slab jig up right off our table. To find these slab jigs, you can go right on our website. We have them there. We actually stock and make this product, and we love it. We're going to show you how to set it up right now. Okay, so we already have this 2x4 on this side of the table screwed down to our table, and so that's a nice anchor point. So what Mitch is going to do is he's going to pull this 2x4 out tight so that we get some good friction on this slab jig. Mitch, let it loose a little bit. So you can see when it's loose, it's going to roll super easy, but it's got a little bit of play to it. Now pull it tight. So now when he pulls it tight, you can see it rolls a little bit smoother, a little bit more tension, and we like that. We like it to be under tension. So he's going to pull that 2x4 out for me while I screw this in. And you use your slab jig basically as your template. That's right there. Sweet. Well, that's a great little tip. How do you like that trick, Mitch?
That's nice and tight. You know, one guy really could do this all by himself. That's awesome.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you can use this jig by yourself. It is nice when you have real hard wood. So a lot of our slabs are cedar and redwood and pine, but when you get into the walnuts, or like we did that one table where we laminate very hard solid wood, your router's going to be under more tension, and so it's nice to have a second guy kind of stabilize one end if you need. But I've done these by myself for a long time.
You like a hot knife through warm water.
Yes, sir. I like that. All right, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to level this table to our table. So you can see there's a big rock in this table, and so we're going to find the best place that it should be. We'll shim it, and then we'll screw it to our table so that it doesn't keep rocking while we router our table out. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our slab jig as our constant. We're going to measure off of that jig, and right here we're 1 1/4, and over here we're 1 7/8. So we're really high on this point. So Mitch, do you want to take some shims? We'll shim that end up over there, and let's see how that helps us. Yep, so we'll go right there. That puts us at 1 1/2 inches, and that puts us at 1 3/4 inches here. So let's see where we are down here now. So that puts us at 1 inch, and we're at 1 3/4 inches. So we need to kind of split the difference on that. So, you know, this table, this slab, is really, really out of whack. You know, it's really twisted. So we'll have to remove some meat to make it work, but that's okay. Okay, now what we're going to do, we have it shimmed right where we want, so we're going to take off the meat where we want it. That's what's nice about having your jig go across is you can measure the different points. So our low point is right here where this big saw cut is, but we need a nice flat bottom because we're going to turn this into a river table. We'll be cutting it in half and then joining those two live edges. So we need a nice flat bottom so that we don't leak on our epoxy. So let's go ahead and screw this down. We're just going to toenail it through the end. We know we're going to square these ends off, so we got a little play here. We'll pre-drill, so you want to pre-drill it, and then you want to run a screw through that after you've pre-drilled. If I don't pre-drill, I'm going to split this thing out. So let's go ahead and do that. The nice thing about toenailing this through the end grain is it almost looks like a wormhole if you do want to fill it and save it. If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying, right? Okay, let's do the opposite side on this side, Mitch. So all we did there is we added 2 3-inch screws. We pre-drilled it on opposite corners, and that is, can you believe how solid that is to the table?
Go anywhere.
All right, let's grab our router and we'll set it to the low point here, Mitch. So what I want to do is I want my router bit to go down and touch this low point there. So right there is where I'm going to set it, and then everything's going to get routed right to that point. Isn't that amazing? Okay, sometimes it's a better idea to take a little bit less wood off with each router pass than try to get it all at once. This slab was really twisted, and so we're going to come back now, and we've made a couple of passes. We're going to do a final pass just to make sure it's all nice and flush. Another thing is we're going to make sure that our low points are all gone. If they're not, if you were off by just a little, it's okay to make another pass. Well, you can see now just how flat. There's no rock. There's no rock in that table. It's perfectly flat. Now we have a great bottom and a great base for our river table. Let's continue to the next step. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 50 grit metal sanding disc and I'm going to clean these edges up. I'm going to take all the sharp points and the dirt and the dust and the grime, and we're just going to take it back to nice raw wood so we get good adhesion with our casting epoxy. Let's clean these live edges up right now. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to router the other side of this slab, and we're going to toenail it down, but there's no need to shim it now because it's really flat. Now, because we have a live edge on both sides of our river, it really doesn't matter where you cut this, but I like to keep it where both pieces of wood have quite a bit of meat left. Also right here where the wood's kind of rotten and cracked out, I'm anxious to see how this is going to look when we start putting in our Stone Coat Countertop casting epoxy. I think that's going to look really neat, filling in all these imperfections and things like that. Let's check it out. Okay, time to cut this slab in half. I'm going to use my skill saw. We'll get to it right now. I like cutting on foam. That way when you cut all the way through a project, it doesn't cut your wood table. This piece of insulation foam is perfect so that now I'm going to create a river. All I'm going to do now is flip these pieces into themselves so that I have a nice live edge facing into itself. Let's do that. we'll take those pieces and then we'll just figure out where our river is going to go. But that's exactly how you make a river table. Oh, that's going to look sweet. I love the figure in this. This is just perfect. So what we're doing is we're just really trying to see what should be the top and what should be the bottom of this slab. And I think we're going to actually put the junkier side to the bottom, and that's just fine. So we're going to put this, this will be the top. So we're going to flip this over so the bottom's facing up so we can install our bars that are going to really stabilize our project and make it last for a real long time. Let's do it. Alright, the next step that we're going to do is take our 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch square tubing. We'll cut our final bar. We just use a metal cutoff wheel to do that. And then we'll wipe these down with acetone. You know, these come with an oily residue on them to protect them from rusting. You wipe that down with acetone, and then you take your 50 grit metal sanding disc. You'll grind that down a little bit to create a mechanical bond.
After you've cut your 3/4 by 3/4 inch square metal tubing, you're going to take your 50 grit metal sanding disc and rough up that square tubing so it gets good adhesion to our quick coat. Our quick coat is designed to be used in conjunction with these bars to hold them in your slab. We like to use a 3/4 inch router bit and a spacer, or a 7/8 inch router bit so you have some space around each bar to handle some of the quick coat epoxy. So what we're doing is we're mixing up a 1-to-1 ratio of part A and part B of our quick coat. We add an equal amount of our thickening powder, and now we have our quick coat ready to apply with a Bondo spreader in each crack and crevice of the bars. So what we do is just butter a little bit in there, push down that bar, and we'll come back and smooth it out with our Bondo spreader. We do a good job smoothing and keeping it level with the surface.
Okay guys, we're ready to sand our quick coat gap and seam fill. We're going to get that nice and flush on the bottom of our slab, and then we're going to chop the ends square so that we get a really good square table. Let's get started. Another thing I wanted to note here is just how strong this thing is with those bars. I mean, those bars make this table one piece. It really becomes very strong. I love those. They're the way to go. It's just, I like it more than Bondo, and it's gonna last really, really well. We sanded this flush at the bottom. All right, we're ready for the next step. What we're going to do is we're going to use this smooth panel board. It's a real slick surface. It's a piece of masonite with a real slick surface. That'll be the bottom of our form that we're building right now. That way we're going to tape off the bottom as well with some Tyvek tape, but this will be a good, easy release for us. Mitch, let's throw this up here. Okay, next thing we're going to do is put our table up just so that we can build our form. It's not going to be permanently down yet because we will move it again, but we'll start building our form around this table. So Mitch, what I'm going to do is we're going to actually just run these long, and then we'll put in our two ends, okay? All right, one thing that I like to use a lot in my shop is a Kreg jig. These Kreg jigs can be found all over the place. We'll put a link in the description on this video. We use this for building cabinet face frames, for building boxes, and also for building forms. It's a really tight joint that's immediate. It holds strong right away. So what I like to do is just pre-pocket screw all of my edges, and then I'll screw through our panel board so that it's nice and snug. Let's get started. You don't want your bit touching the wood and then starting it. Pull it away from your wood, start it, and then plunge. Okay, what I like to do is pre-fill all my pocket screw holes so that when we flip this up vertical, it's just a quick method to screw it down. These have great holding power. I like to get coarse thread when I'm doing something like this so that it will grab my panel board and my plywood really, really tight. Okay, what I'm going to do now is just trace this river so that we know where we're going to put our Tyvek tape. Another thing we're going to do with the Tyvek tape is we're going to tape all the seams where our vertical boards meet our panel board. You ready for that, Mitch?
I'm ready. I am amazed how well that sticks to that long Masonite. That's awesome, Bob. Does not leak it.
No. All right, Mitch, we're ready to put this back in our form. It's going to be nice and tight. That Tyvek tape is a great tip. It's going to stop anything from leaking. Got a great tight form here.
Yeah, it's real smooth. I can really see that casting resin popping off really easily.
All right, what we're going to do now is we're going to put our table back in our form. Then we're going to use our 2x4s and our clamps. We cut little spacers out of the excess plywood that we had so that our supports are a little taller than our vertical walls here. And then we're going to clamp this to our table. And now our table is going to be so tight, pressed down, because we're clamping it, it's not going to go anywhere.
Right.
All right, you want to hand that over? Let's get it going.
Another quick tip, when placing your slab back into your form, it's good to loosen one end so it's not too hard to get it back in and you don't wrinkle your tape. Also, cover the bottom of your spacers with Tyvek tape so they release very easily.
Well, we are ready to pour our casting resin. Our slab here is over an inch. It's about 1.5 inches thick. And so what we're going to do is break this up into 2 pours. You don't want to go higher than 1 inch per pour on casting resin. And how we're going to do that is we're going to do 1/4 inch at a time. We'll torch it and we'll keep filling that up. In this case, we'll stop at about 3/4.
Yeah.
After that, we'll let that dry for a day, and then we'll do our next pour. We'll fill this all the way up. And what colors do you want to do, man? What do you think will look good?
I think some red, a lava table or something.
Yeah, we were talking about that. You know, we're gonna make this thing look like a center full of lava. We'll fill all these burn holes with some red. I think we add some yellow, maybe a little black,
cool.
And you know, give it that feel. I really like how this has got some blue color in this pine, and I think that'll be something different. Let's do it.
Cool.
All right. Now, one quick tip too. How do we know how much casting resin to use? That's where our phone support comes in. If you call us with your dimensions of what you plan on making your river void, we'll calculate that for you. We're happy to do that. We need the length, the width, and the height. And we'll tell you exactly how much casting resin you'll need for your project. We'll even tell you how much to pour and how much to mix per coat. We're happy to help you anytime. All right, folks, the next step is mixing our Stone Coat Countertop casting epoxy. This is a 2-to-1 ratio. You're still going to start with your part B, and then we'll follow up with 2 parts of part A. 1 part of part B to 2 parts of part A by volume. And so we're going to mix 120 ounces for this coat. So we'll use 40 ounces of part B and 80 ounces of part A. We're going to mix it by hand. We're going to use a stir stick. This is the only product that we really use a stir stick on because we don't want to entrain a bunch of air. Because we're going to pour it much thicker than we do our normal Stone Coat Countertop epoxy, the air will get stubborn. You don't want to leave a bunch of bubbles in it, and whipping it with a drill will entrain a lot of air. So we'll mix it by hand. We'll mix it for about about 6 to 8 minutes with a stir stick. We'll put our metallic in there. We'll really mix that up, get this rich looking, and then we'll torch each 1/4 of an inch, and we'll pour a single coat up to 1 inch thick. You ready to get started, Mitch?
I'm ready.
Did I explain that all right? Did I miss anything?
No.
All right, man. Here we go.
All we end up adding to this batch was our deep red metallic powder. We really love how rich this came out.
Okay, we got our Stone Coat Countertop casting epoxy all mixed up. We're ready for our first pour. What we're going to do is we're going to pour a 1/4 inch at a time. We'll torch it. We'll add another 1/4 inch. We'll torch it, and we'll finally add our final 1/4 inch of this pour. Let's go ahead and do that right now. You ready, Mitch?
I'm ready.
Man, what do you think of this, Mitch?
It's gonna be beautiful.
So why are you stirring it? What happens when you do that?
You can kind of move around those metallics that are suspended in that casting resin. Give it some texture, give it some look, but it also is allowing some of that air that is trapped down in there to come up to the surface.
Now we're not gonna see a lot of this that you're doing because we're gonna do another coat, but you will see those ends.
Okay, guys, we got this river table coated for its first coat. Mitch, what do you think of using that red, man?
It's really pretty. It's prettier than I thought it'd be. It's awesome.
It's amazing. You get more depth when you have a deeper coat, and it does these effects. You moved it with that stick, and the colors are outstanding.
They are, and as we watch it, you torch it, it gets more and more beautiful and more depth as we sit and watch it as it's doing its thing.
All those bubbles come out really, really clean. You know, we have guys who use this just straight crystal clear, and you can get a crystal clear pour all the way through depth, and that's not easy to do. You got to have the right product. This is it. We nailed it. I'm very glad that we used red. I don't know if I'm going to add anything else to this red tomorrow when we do our second coat.
Right, I almost would like to just keep it pure red. It's so pretty.
Oh, I like it. This is cool. Hey, thanks a lot, Mitch. Let's let this dry. We'll come back tomorrow and we'll pour our second casting resin coat.
Right.
Good job, buddy.
Yeah, man.
We've got our first pour dry. I came back and man, this just looks incredible. I'll give you a close-up here in a second.
It's really, really pretty.
I'm just thrilled. It looks like red abalone shell or something like that. I really like what the casting epoxy does when it's deep. It takes those metallics and it has a mind of its own, and it really just moves for us. We're going to do our next coat of casting epoxy. We're going to mix it in the very same fashion. We'll pour it in and we'll let this dry. Now we poured this last night and it came back and it's morning time, so we just let it dry for about 7 hours. And you can push your finger in it and it still will move, and that's normal. It's tacky, so I don't have to sand. If I let this harden up, just quickly sand it with 220 grit, and then you'll do your next coat. But because it's still tacky, I can do my next coat without sanding. Let's get started. Okay guys, we did our second coat of casting epoxy in the center. We used our deep red metallic, and oh my goodness, I love that by itself. We were debating adding other color, and I think we hit a home run here. Dad, what do you think of that color?
I love the color. I cannot believe how ruby red it is. It just looks amazing.
It looks deep. You actually asked, is there clear? I mean, you were tricked, huh?
The depth, I'm going, God, oh my word. Yeah, the depth was insane.
You know, it's good to be able to look at this table now. We know that we have some red all over it. I actually tried something off camera. As this was drying and curing, I came over to our mess over here as it started to gel, and I scooped some of it up right here on my Bondo spreader, and I went through some of the voids and wormholes and cracks and stuff that we were planning on filling in another step, and I got 90% of them filled. Some of them, it was still too big of a hole and it would kind of go in. Some of the holes that are too big and they suck in too much epoxy, we'll thicken it and then we'll butter that over there. But most of them were filled with our trash laying over here on the side. It was really cool. Another thing I wanted to show on the Bondo spreader is if you let the epoxy harden and don't try to clean it off, it actually will pop off really clean for you. It'll save that, and it's actually cleaner than trying to clean it while it's wet. Good little tip there. Okay, the next step is to deform and demold our slab, and this is the fun part because it's just, you're going to see how well this comes apart. We're going to take these 2x4s off, which is holding everything really tight, and we'll see how well that Tyvek tape lets us pull this right up nice and clean. Let's get started. And we use that Tyvek tape on the bottom of these. So I want to show you how good that will release. So because we use that Tyvek, it comes right off the surface without gluing itself to the tabletop. No big deal.
I can't believe that.
Look how clean that is.
I thought you had to knock them off or fiddle or something.
Well, yeah, you remember what happens when we don't glue that tape? It's just incredible. I love that trick. I'll tell you, that trick right here is worth the price of the video, guys. All right, we're gonna lift this up off the surface. This is the true test right here. And there you go, guys. Beautiful. Look at how much of it stuck to the tape.
Hey guys, I wanted to show you a close-up of this river before we sand this top. Man, that's really beautiful. You can see,
Look at the end.
yeah, look at this. It just goes right through there. You got a beautiful look there. We're gonna sand that and trim it flush. Let's sand this up right now.
Here we're using our 50 grit metal sanding disc to get all the excess casting epoxy off the surface. After that, we're going to trim our edges flush using our skill saw so that we get 90-degree corners on both ends. After this step, we're going to switch to our random orbital sander, starting at 60 grit, moving on to 100 grit, 150 grit, and finally 220 grit. Then we're going to router the top and the bottom. On the top, we use 1/4 inch roundover. On the bottom, a 1/8 inch roundover. Here, we're using our burn-in stick to address all the little cracks and crevices and anything that might suck in epoxy as you do your seal coats. As you can see, you heat it up using the propane torch, then you scrape off the excess using a Bondo spreader. After you've gotten everything scraped flush, you come back and sand with 220 to remove all the residue from the burn-in stick. We're going to sand this really good. Make sure to remove all the marks caused by that initial 50 grit metal sanding. Let's go ahead now and mix up our epoxy. We're going to do a 1-to-1 ratio, and we're going to add 1 ounce per square foot. After pouring our epoxy on the surface, we're going to use a regular shower squeegee to spread it out in a nice thin coat. This is our first of 3 coats, all applied the same way. First, we'll spread it around on the top using the shower squeegee, and then we'll come back with our gloved hand and rub those edges. Rub it in nice and good in those edges, making sure to get everything wet. And then after this dries, we'll come back and sand with 220 in between coats. Right here, we're torching all those bubbles out, but don't spend too much time torching because of the thin coat. You don't need to.
All right, guys, we'll let that first seal coat dry, and then we'll come back and we will do our second seal coat. I really love what this has done. It's waking up this slab so much. I love where we put that red, and then I came through with the burn-in stick and filled some of it with a different color, and those colors working together looks really cool. It looks like this red is just mineral deposits into this slab. I really, really like this. We took this junk slab and we're turning it into something just so cool. Stay tuned. We'll see you in a bit. Okay guys, we're ready for our next seal coat. What we're going to do is we're going to sand with 220 grit sandpaper. We'll wipe the dust, and then we'll just apply another seal coat at 1 ounce per square foot. This is starting to really fill in. It looks really pretty. It's soaked it in some areas, but as we apply these seal coats, it looks better and better with each coat. Here we go. Let's get started. All we're doing when we do these seal coats is we're just quickly sanding the surface. You don't need to make it flat. You just need to rough it up a little bit to create a mechanical bond. All right, folks, we've got our third seal coat all done on this river table. Now it's time for our flood coat. And the only difference between our seal coats and our flood coat is we do 3 seal coats at 1 ounce per square foot, and we do 1 flood coat at 3 ounces per square foot. But inevitably at this time, we're going to look for any pinholes or any little dots that the epoxy's just soaking through and it won't fill up on your seal coats. That's when we're going to use the burn-in stick. We're going to use that right now on a couple of spots here. I got 2 here and I got 1 right here on this little stubborn crack. I'll show you those right now up close. All right, guys, so here's 1 right here. That's a little pinhole. And then I got 1 right here. There's a little divot. And then I got this crack over here, and I could see just little divots soaking in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to mark those with blue tape, and then we're going to fill them with a burn-in stick. Now the reason that I'm marking this with blue tape is because if you had a really big slab with a number of these, you don't want to miss one before you do your flood coat, because then it's just going to soak in that same area and you're going to need to fill it and do it again. So we don't want to do that. We want to get it right this time. Our seal coats are really effective on most everything on this slab, but now we just have a couple of stubborn areas that we're going to address before we actually flood coat. Another thing that I'm actually getting that's on order, I wish it was here, is a clear burn-in stick. I'm going to try that as well to see if it shows up any divot after I filled that in. I want to see if the color hides underneath the epoxy, which my theory is it will, but we'll get that and we'll let you know how that works. But in this case, we've already filled it with some of our brown burn-in sticks, so we're just going to use the same color. So I'm going to sand these areas lightly with 220. I'll fill them and then I'll sand the entire top after that. So as you can see, my burn-in stick pieces are getting pretty small, so I just put them into a set of channel locks so I can torch it without burning my fingers. Alright, I got the burn-in stick in those 3 divot areas that were just stubborn, and now I'm just going to use 220 grit to sand off the residue, anything left from that stick. When you're sanding the piece, all you need to do is rough it up. It doesn't need to be all perfectly uniform. So all I'm doing in that step is just roughing everything up to create a mechanical bond, and I'm sanding off any high points on my edges and where I routed the top. You don't want any surface tension created by rough edges when the epoxy is trying to roll over that edge. All right, we're going to wipe off this table and we'll get started with our flood coat. All right, I got our clear Stone Coat countertop epoxy all mixed up. We're going to use our 1/8 inch square notch trowel to spread this out. We'll chop it with our chop brush. Make sure you pull any loose brushes or anything like that off the brush, and then we're going to torch it out 3 times. I got the room heated up. I used our space heater. I heated our bottles up so they're nice and warm. That helps us mix the epoxy, keeps it a little more clear so you don't have so much trouble torching it out. And then we're going to let this cure in a nice warm room. Right now it's about 72, 73 degrees in here, and that's just ideal. Here we go. Hey guys, thanks for watching our video on how to take a trash slab that was cut with a chainsaw and turn it into a piece of furniture. I can't believe what this old nasty piece of wood turned into. I love the deep red metallic. We just used that in that river. I really enjoyed this project. Thanks for watching. You can visit our website anytime at stonecoatcountertops.com. Feel free to call us on the phone anytime for free project support. We'll help you out anytime with all the questions that you may have and walk you through your project. You can see all of our tips and tricks on our other videos on our YouTube channel. Please subscribe. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up. Give us some comments below. Let us know what you'd like to see in the future. Give us some feedback on this video. Thanks again for watching. Share this with your friends. And until next time, from Stone Coat Countertops, you got this. We'll see you soon. Woo!